to another episode of Education Contemplation. I'm your host, Joshua Preza.
I'm Francis.
I'm Gustavo.
I'm Juan, and these are our special guests.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace Velasquez.
Hi, and I'm Jeremiah Kleckner.
So, it's been a while since our last episode, I know that. A lot of delays, a lot of stuff, but we're finally here. And today, I wanted to talk about student workload and all that stuff. Because, as students, we have to deal with a lot of stuff, a lot of assignments, clubs, so I got together an amazing teacher, an amazing student who should hopefully be able to give us a little bit of insight on how it's like to be a student. Because obviously we're all students, we know, but like for example, Grace is in a lot of programs. She gets better grades than any of us. And yeah, so I guess to start, I just want to ask Mr. Kleckner here, as a teacher, what are your opinions on giving large workloads?
It depends on the kind of work you're talking about here. All right, so one of the things that I always try to focus on is the intensity of the work as opposed to the volume of the work. Because there is a difference, especially for an advanced student. So what class, you take AP classes,
Yes,
right?
I do.
Okay, so you'll see this. Who else here has AP classes? 1, 2, 3, sure. Beautiful, okay, cool. So you should see this difference. In a lot of general ed classes, you'll get prescribed work at volume. And it's because they need to meet certain standards or parts of the curriculum. For your AP classes, what you're going to get, what you should be getting, a lot more focused and difficult and targeted assignments, but the volume and page count should not be as much because the intensity is ratchet up. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
as I wanted to add on because last year I took English 3 honors, just honors because I was too scared to take AP Lit. And then the sudden change for AP Lang this year was, you can see it where in English 3, they just give you volume. It's just the workbook. But then you go to AP Lang, I have Workload, great teacher, and he just provides, and it helps me grow as a writer, because I'm still not the best writer, but I'm learning, and having that targeted assignment helps tremendously.
And the thing is, with AP classes or more advanced classes, you have some freedom, so you can go ahead and target the assignments a little better. You get more adaptation involved, but it's not as if the intention for the general ed classes or even for the honors classes is to stick with workbook or that kind of prescription, but there is a more regulated and demanding curriculum that requires specific essay prompts or specific mandatory readings, where when you get into the higher end, for example, for AP Lang, I teach AP Lang for seniors. When you're doing a synthesis essay, it's more about teaching the targeted skimming and reading and the aggregation of information as opposed to the glut of it. If I'm making sense.
Yeah.
I would say that's
I also took AP Lang, and I noticed that the workload compared to an English honors class is definitely a lot less busy work, I'd say. Because, a lot of it seemed like work just to do work,
Right.
just to fill a grade.
Right.
But AP Lang, I'm actually learning how to write an argumentative essay, for example, and I feel like it also gives teachers more room to be creative in an AP class, because I know you're still teaching to the test, but there's a lot of ways you can teach it. For example, we were learning about logical fallacies, and I got to do a really fun project on it where I got to record a video and advertisement, and I don't see myself doing that for an honors class. They just give me.
Unfortunately, I mean, the lack of the prescribed roadmap allows teachers to be a little bit more creative, and not everybody does their best work when they have the guardrails taken off, but a lot of people do. And I would like for us to trust our teachers more and take some of the restrictions off so that we can be innovative. The biggest problem with that is that the people who aren't comfortable with that kind of freedom, and not because they don't want to work hard. Some people need structure in order to produce well. Some teachers are just going to need that kind of one after the other expectation without like too much of a gap in between assignments or too much of a wiggle room for adaptation. So I'll give you a different example. One of the things that I did in the AP class was that you've all used like Albert.io, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've all used Albert.io. Everybody finds it grueling because it's pretty intense, and the questions are designed to be as difficult as what you're going to expect under testing conditions. So what I do instead of assigning an Albert.io and giving you a grade based on the correct or incorrect multiple choice answers that you get, which if you do it that way, then all the students do is copy off each other, or one person takes a bullet for the class and then everybody copies off of what the actual correct answers are once you get those answers back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty standard. Like that's
Yeah.
essentially what we used to do on paper 25, 30 years ago. So I imagine that's what you do now when it's a lot easier to communicate that with technology. So what I do with instead, I assign a batch of Albert.io articles, and at the end of the quarter, I did this at the end of marking period 1, I'm doing this again at the end of January, you have to, as a student, you have to do an autopsy of every incorrect answer you got on Albert.io and create a either graphic or slideshow analyzing and assessing what types of questions you get wrong more often so that you become much more aware of what your learning gaps are. And what I ended up discovering, especially at the end of the first quarter, because I had them do it, and it is brutal. It is brutal when you have to do an autopsy of your own failures. And that's exactly how I sell it to them too, because the pressure's off. The pressure's off to be immediately successful, so they don't have to worry about fighting for every correct answer. But as long as everybody takes every question, every article seriously, and you legitimately get something right or wrong, what ended up happening at the end of marking period 1 was that I found that like 80% of the kids in my AP Lang class were abysmal with tone, not text evidence, not identifying thesis, not identifying purpose, not doing any of those other skills. Tone, they would get massacred. Almost every tone question was wrong. So I spent a good chunk of my time in marking period 2 targeting instruction specifically for that. All right? So I mean, like, I wanted to do something that's corrective, and that's the type of thing in an AP class where without the roadmap where I have to do one thing after the other, I'm allowed a lot more freedom. I'm allowed to target areas of weakness, which I feel is a lot more valuable use of our time.
Yeah,
I definitely agree.
That's
Seems really effective.
that autopsy thing
I feel
sounds like intense.
I would have fun.
It's
That
also
type of
important.
self-assessment is
With
amazing.
the slides, I would like. Yeah.
Right.
But I assume it helps a lot, right?
It helps, and it helps in a way that isn't laborious for me either. Like I'm trying to do a couple things here. I'm trying to teach habits of self-reflection while also not giving myself hours upon hours of papers to grade. So if I were going to do like rhetorical analysis essays ad nauseum, all I would have is 40 or 50 pounds or like 8 crates of papers that I'm bringing home and grading for 12 hours a night.
Yeah.
And I just don't have that time in my life. And the only person that would benefit would let me know what your errors are, as opposed to you doing a self-analysis where you are familiar with your errors and you report those errors to me so that then we can worry about correcting it. You know, it's more work and more ownership of your own skill set.
I mean, from what you've described, basically, is that from what I could take away from this small part of the conversation is that normally general classes, the work is just kind of like the type of work you can really just do like really easily. You can just do it just to do it. Like I can probably finish most of my assignments in like, just like each assignment might take me like 20 minutes max. While compared to how you explain the AP classes is more like personalized. Like you have to like yourself know exactly like what you have to basically be better.
So like one, you may be taking that as because you personally have a robust skill set, these type of classes that you're talking about might be easy for you, but not easy for everybody. The idea is the personalization angle as opposed to the busy work angle. That's the matter of priority that I try to aim for. And that ends up taking a lot of the physical, time-consuming workload off of a student's plate and tries to ask them to, whenever they do make an effort, the effort has some deliberate and set value. That's the work for that.
Thank you. I wanted to just make sure that, and Gustavo, sorry for cutting you off. What were you trying to say?
I just feel like we need more accountability like that in our schools. I feel like if more teachers held their students accountable, say, hey, I want you to review your answers, make sure that you understand why you got it wrong. Because there's a lot of test prep services and tutoring outside of school that's exactly what they do. They make you go through your answers, you do a diagnostic, you have to figure out why you got something wrong. And that's the proper way to figure out how to learn.
Yeah, but that's pretty much
if
how
you don't know what you
learn,
got
yeah.
wrong, how are you going to learn?
And the weird part is, like, I know you say you want more accountability, and a lot of people say that. Everybody says that, from the teachers in the staff room to the people in Trenton trying to figure out what should be on the next tests. The problem is not everybody is as invested. And I know you said, I told you that, Juan, you come here with a skill set, Gustavo, everybody here at this table has an investment emotionally and intellectually in school, and I know this because you are here after 4 o'clock doing something that is not just for a senior capstone, but it requires time and interest and investment and research that goes beyond what's asked of your studies. So everybody in this room, I'm going to hold you to a different standard as opposed to the general populace, because I got to tell you, for the ideas that I have here, I still have one sophomore class where I only have, I have a grade 10 English sophomore class as of right now in marking period 2, where only 5 people are passing. I can't control what they choose or choose not to do. I can adapt it as best I can. I can personalize it. I can target it. But that kind of accountability, what do you do? The accountability conversation becomes a lot more difficult when you have people who don't meet those expectations at scale. It's different when it's just like the five of you sitting around here, and we're like, let's just say this is a small class. I can hold the 5 of you much more personally accountable because there's more interaction, there's more time. But if you're looking at, just look at any of your general ed sophomore, junior classes, not only do we have a lot of teacher absences in this building, but we also have a considerable amount of lack of effort from the students that we have here. And it's going to be really hard to hold, what would it be?
Like each
20.
person accountable.
Each person, yes, but 20 out of 25. It's going to be really hard to hold 20 out of 25 accountable when you're already worried about overpopulation in the building, or when you're already worried about bad press, or when you're already worried about, or if you're a non-tenured teacher. I've been at this now for but in April, I'll be at this for 18 years. If you're a non-tenured teacher, I've been teaching in Perth Amboy since 2005.
Yeah.
So if you're a non-tenured teacher, you are legitimately terrified of having any kind of record of that many students doing that poorly at one time. I know plenty of the administrators here, and I know my supervisor, and I have earned a lot of trust so that they know that whatever the grade standing is before the marking period ends, I'm going to end up prodding until I get that right back up to where it should be. And there's accountability, of course, with parents and whatnot. But just relying on what internal motivation the child has, that is not a winning strategy by itself.
Yeah, basically, teachers can't control everything. At the end of the day, the student himself makes the decisions.
Absolutely.
The teacher can help a lot, but the student has the final say.
And you said earlier, you said self-reflection. Students tend to have, it's very hard. It's hard to have that I'm going to give an example as a person who performs. Reflecting on your performances, let's say a day prior, it's hard. It's really hard. And then as a student, opening Infinite Campus, reflecting on the grades on Infinite Campus, you're like, what went wrong. It's that feeling, and self-reflection, just a word in itself.
And it's hard for the age group too. I mean, most human beings aren't really capable of abstract thought until the age of 14. So it's not even as if we could try to teach some self-analysis in the earlier grades, but a lot of that mental capacity isn't there until like freshman year. To really do it right, to really like have some proper conversations about what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Also, I'm going to be entirely 100% with you. When you go on Infinite Campus, there's also a good amount of teachers here who don't update grades on time, so you don't really have, and even, by the way, even when you look on Infinite Campus and you see a number, that tells you nothing. That literally tells you nothing, except for, go for it.
Because it's gone to the point where earlier in the stages, I was all about numbers. I have to get the good grades, I have to get A's, I have to be top in my class, that type of mindset. And then I realized, well, that's negative. I had to turn off my notifications for Infinite Campus because it was just addicting. It was addicting to get A's. And then that's where I literally just went downhill, and it was.
And I know I mentioned the example of Albert I.O. because Albert I.O. does an excellent job of making you feel bad about every mistake you make, because it has and you could, and I know I just used that one program and I mentioned that one again, but you could do this with Newsela, you could do this with Nearpod, you could do this with pretty much anything that gives you your results back. We have access to so many programs that provide you instant feedback, but we don't have the right professional development to teach our teachers how to use that data in order to help guide their instruction forward. That's missing. Not only that, we don't teach you to look at your results in a way that is self-reflective. So again, I'm going to go back to the Albert I.O. because what it does, you got this question wrong, this is the right answer, and this is why. And eventually, when you get into the habit of checking out why you have your wrong answers and you start seeing those patterns, like my kids did in marking period 1 for tone, you start recognizing the types of things that you usually miss. And then once you can identify and name a type of thing that you usually miss, you're a lot less likely to miss it. That's the type of thing I'm going for.
That hit. That just I was like, yeah.
But I was curious because I know a lot of the AP teachers here are good and we have a lot of good things going on here. But as a charter student, Gustavo, I was curious how it is in charter because you've said some things to me, in private about the AP teachers, some good.
I said some things in public on this podcast about the state of the school. I feel like, the thing is, last year, the AP program was actually pretty solid. We had AP Computer Science, we had AP Lit, Lang, Calculus. Everything was going good. I took AP Computer Science Principles. I took like 4 AP classes last year. It was stressful. It was a lot of work, and that's how it was meant to be. It was challenging. I actually pushed myself, got good grades on the exam, all that. This year, because of the teacher shortage, we lost a lot of good teachers. We had to cut out AP Computer Science Principles and A completely. We don't have it anymore. And in the beginning of the year, we had about 3 kids in AP Lang. And then all of them just went to a different class. So we had to get rid of the class entirely.
Get wrecked. That's terrible.
Yeah. and last year, our teacher for Calculus BC, I remember he kept saying, like, oh, I'm not going to leave this school in like a million years. And then he resigned out of the blue. So right now, we have a math teacher that's teaching both Calculus AB and BC. And it's not good because she's also teaching like Algebra 2 honors. She has half of the math department, basically. She teaches the entire school. And it's stressful for her. A lot of teachers are overworked. I know a science teacher. She's teaching AP Biology, AP Environmental Science, Biology honors, Medical Terminology and honors. It's not
Entire science department.
Yeah, it's just we have whole teachers manning one department by themselves.
Yeah.
It's just very stressful. We have AP classes. There is a record low for AP class attendance. We only have like 5-6 kids in each AP class this year.
So, Gustavo, a question real quick. What do you find is the result? Like, what do you see with teachers having this much, without naming names, I don't want names, people who are given so much work, do you notice a wear down? Do you notice like drop in the quality of the individual work?
You know, surprisingly, no. I feel like the quality of their teaching and the work, it's still superb. It's still top notch. I see it more in their character and how they interact. You can tell that they're stressed, they're worn down. Like sometimes they stutter a lot when they speak, it's more frequent. But they're dedicated to giving out the maximum quality of work to their students possible. And I think that's something that's noble. And that's something that should be taught more in schools for teachers. They should be more invested into it. It's not universal. You can't just hand it to someone. It's not a thing. It's something that you gain with experience. And that's one common trait these teachers have. They have tenure. So I feel like over time you gain this quality. But I still think it's insane that you're manning an entire department by yourself. But
Yeah.
they're doing a damn good job at it. It's not healthy, but what can you do at the moment?
This small question, just out of curiosity. How big is your senior class?
90.
90?
90?
90 in the back.
Damn.
Yeah, last year we had 107.
So
Is
it's
Lou
just
Valdez still the director there? Louis
No.
Valdez? No?
No.
Oh, yeah, that's the guy from way, way back, like
Yeah.
15 years ago.
I think they've switched like administration a lot.
Okay.
All right, going out of topic.
Yeah.
Moving back to the topic.
It's really stressful.
I mean, do you think if say they had like all these like, you think if they had like actual like good working conditions, like they had like only teaching a couple classes, you think their work would be better or?
Oh, 100%. Look at this. You're the average teacher at charter, right? You come in at 7:30, you teach your classes. Let's say you're one of these AP teachers. You man an entire department for the whole day. You only have like one break, that's your lunch period. And then you stay until 4 for a tutoring period, a window from 3 to 4. No one comes. It's very rare for someone to come after school. That's not really a thing. And then sometimes you run a club as well. Most of these teachers also have clubs. So they stay from like 7:30 to like 5 or 6. And they just get paid regularly as everyone else that leaves at 4. So it's not fun. There's no incentive besides them actually being invested with their students and developing connections, but not a lot of teachers want that. So teachers want to get in and get out.
So you mentioned like we don't, like one of the phrases that you said earlier, we don't like teach our teachers how to be invested. What do you feel is the consequence of overburdening them? And do you feel that the investment from those teachers is something that is intrinsic to them or something environmental in the charter school that pushes them to behave that way?
I'm sorry with the first part of the question. I feel like once you overburden a teacher enough, because these people I'm talking about, these are like outliers. These are people that can handle a lot of things. I'm not saying they should be burdened. They don't deserve to be burdened, but they can handle a lot of pressure. But if you take a normal teacher, just like from this school, for example, you give them too many classes, too much work to do, they're going to fold. Maybe the quality of their work starts to decrease. They start to give more busy work. Maybe they get tired. They start taking more sick days. You're going to notice it, and it's not fun. It really takes a toll on their mental health. And I've seen it before where some of these teachers, they just take random health days to just take a break at home because it's way too much, really. And sometimes, like, even when they're not teaching a class on their lunch break, maybe they get forced to cover a class because there's a teacher out. So it does take a toll on them, and I have seen it. But I would say, in terms of what causes the issue, I would say it's both intrinsic and environmental. Because I feel like the charter system as a whole, we don't get a lot of funding from the state. Our funding pretty much depends entirely on our test scores. And over the years, that has gone down drastically. So what the school is focusing on now, they want to do everything they can to increase test scores. And unfortunately, that's not reflecting the standards we have in our classes. So if you walk into an average math class at UL, you will see that the quality just like, it goes down. Like, there's a lot more busy work because what they want to do is that they just want to have more after-school tutoring, have more resources out of school so that kids can increase their test scores. But in school, there's no real emphasis on it. So I feel like at that point, most teachers, they don't really care. They see that their school is not investing enough resources into their classrooms to make the curriculum better. So they think, why not? Why am I trying? And they're just kind of there.
Okay. And we see that here. You see that pretty much
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just with teachers. I mean, you see that with pretty much any place of employment. If you don't feel valued, if you don't feel like your work matters, if you don't feel like you're listened to, or if you feel overburdened, the work suffers. So I want to ask this actually. I know like you're asking the questions here, but what do you notice is the it factor for reinvesting a teacher in their work here? What do you notice reinvigorates them that you have seen?
I mean, for any teacher, I feel like when the students are engaged, then they can match their energy pretty easily. Like, I know a lot of teachers, like, I had Miss Valente last year. She's an amazing teacher, and she was talking about how she had to deal with, because I know last year was a big issue, like the issue you were talking about with a lot of kids not passing their classes. I heard it was a lot worse last year.
Mm.
And she was saying how, so hard for her to deal with and all this stuff, and how it's very stressful for her. But our AP Lit class, where we all interacted, we all were on top of our grades, she, matched her energy, she seemed really invigorated about.
So it was like a
Okay.
breath of fresh air.
Oh, definitely.
Well, last year was not pretty rough, but we were all just trying to get back. We were just trying to get back. It was all a different process for everyone. I had a moment where I was just like, I'm going into class anxious because I don't know what's going to happen. Because we were all learning. Last year we were just like, oh.
Because last year we went straight from being back, and then we went
Right.
straight back into online, and then we went straight back into person.
And it's not just you. I've said this before to a bunch of people. Last year was probably my hardest year of teaching since the first year of teaching. And my first year in Perth Amboy was an absolute cluster bomb. I know I can't curse here. Yeah, but last year was rough. Last year was really rough because we were on home instruction for like a year and a half.
Exactly.
That
And
January. It was
And
the
then-
January we came back.
Exactly.
We all just,
And then, I'm not even talking about, I'm talking about before. And then we came back with all of these
right.
additional expectations and all of the anxiety that we had built up over the time of being isolated. And then all of a sudden you're around 1,500 people, September, October, November, December, and it wears down on you because you're told to stay 6 feet apart in an environment in which it's impossible to stay 6 feet apart. And you have to try to build teaching activities that aren't group work, which is what the district has been focusing on for the past 15 years or so. Were activities that don't involve as much interaction. Then taking that month off was just beautifully re-traumatizing.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard from some teachers that they might consider just leaving if
There were a
they
lot of
ever
people who did.
if they
There were a lot
ever
of
go
people who
back
did.
online.
Would you guys say you got more workload during quarantine, like the 1 month and the year and a half?
Did you give a lot of work?
I changed what I did a lot. I learned to use, actually, it's a blessing because I did learn to use the resources that the district already pays for. I learned how to use those a lot more effectively. But talking to a plastic screen of mostly black squares kind of sucked.
It does.
That was soul sucking, especially when I had to I felt the need to perform 5, 6 classes, whatever, 45 minutes, and be able to break that up. When I know a lot of my contemporaries, a lot of my peers would set an assignment and then just quietly sit with them muted, with themselves muted.
I mean, it makes sense because humans are social, and then going from like a very social environment just to being completely alone for like 7 hours a day it's tough. Like even for students, it was really rough, and I imagine for teachers it was.
I feel like a lot of the workload was during quarantine was more manageable, but I feel like it was way more depressing.
No,
Because
definitely.
a lot of
Oh,
it,
of
like it
course.
was like the same.
I
I had a
don't-
class during sophomore year, which is like when we had the quarantine,
Yeah.
called Human Geography. And when I took it, I thought it was like an okay class. I didn't really think much of it, but it makes me wonder like how different would that class be if it was in person?
I feel bad
You
for
were
the
learning
people that took
about-
like auto shop during online, or like
Dance.
auto shop or cooking, dance,
Dance.
like any of the physical
Yeah, nah.
classes.
I would definitely agree with you. The workload was easier. I mean, like doing grades, parent contact, writing lesson plans, putting together, like mapping out what I'm doing in the 45 minutes. Like that was so much easier because I wasn't forced to interact with people who I bump into in the hallway. And I'm sure everybody means well, but it's so hard to concentrate when you're surrounded by people. So the workload was easier to manage at home. But just
Boring.
so lonely.
Yeah,
I
it felt
was struggling.
useless.
I was struggling trying to separate my personal life with schoolwork because it was all in one room. It was
Exactly.
like-
Mm.
It's just,
Not just that, but going back to how Grace said, like it's really bad when you see everything as just numbers. During online, it was all numbers.
Exactly.
There was nothing else. It was just pure
Or
numbers.
the Google Classroom notification.
Yeah,
Class is starting. Oh,
it was just all numbers.
I heard from a lot of my peers when they were coming back was the most common complaint that was a given was that it was all a numbers game at that point. Like everything was about just your grade. A lot of people said like I'm just here for the grade basically. Because I know a big issue also last year was apathy among students. They didn't want to do anything.
That's last year, yeah.
I was on the student council that year. It wasn't fun. Nobody really.
it was.
Our events, I heard they weren't like as good as they were expecting it because just that sheer amount of apathy. People didn't want to go after school to do something. They didn't want to pay money to go to an event because they were just clocking in and clocking out like a job basically.
And a lot of that is not wrong. It's just pulling back the curtain because a lot of your grade work, a lot of the schoolwork is a numbers game.
Yeah.
And it's not just a numbers game as far as like what you earn. What I think a lot of the students learned how to mismanage was that their interest and effort is also a numbers game. How much proportionally should I invest in this class in order to earn this letter grade in return? And they would, and then from that point, build forward and do as little as possible. But that's all human behavior. I don't blame anybody for that. That is completely normal human behavior from hundreds of thousands of years ago. I need to go hunt and gather. I'm going to do the least amount of work to get the most amount of benefit. That's how we survived to make it to sit here at the table. So you can't fault people for that.
Obviously.
But without all of the social interactions, without
we
the clubs,
lack-
without any of that, boiling it down to just the numbers,
Exactly. That was my main point. Because obviously school is literally just numbers.
Right.
That's everything.
what's everything?
But how you said, like, there was no fun part. Like, during online, it was just the boring part of school.
Right.
That was it. It was just
You
the
can
boring
even
part.
see it at our events. For example, I always think back about the pep rallies. We've been lacking some pep because it's just seniors, of course, they're gonna start shouting like we made it finally. But then you see the underclassmen, like they were not wearing their class color and stuff like that. It's been a change, a social change.
I mean, even during Spirit Days, I noticed, like,
the December,
yeah, people just don't participate in them. I mean, maybe that's a whole different like thing or something,
Yeah.
but that also has to do like a lot of students just don't care.
Yeah.
We're starting to get back a bit.
Exactly.
Thankfully.
I know you said like last year.
Uh-huh.
Last year was rough.
It-
And let's not even forget the problems that people had re-socializing. Last year, I remember a lot more fights. Not gonna
Oh,
knock on whatever. Last year, there were a lot more conflicts in the hallways than there are this year. By a lot.
Yeah.
By a lot. And I think that's partly because people forgot how to interact with each other. And I know you're talking about workload, and I know that's the topic of the podcast. We're going pretty deep on the pandemic and the horror show that was.
yeah, but that goes into distractions as well. Students tend to get distracted, which excludes the workload. Like, I find myself going back to the subject, homework. For example, homework. We get assigned readings every Sunday. There's moments where I forget about that Sunday, leave that as, I'll leave that for tomorrow. And then it just escalates. So next Sunday, and then I have 13 readings to do and submit it. It's homework.
And now that you bring homework up, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that as like a whole topic in and of itself. So, would you guys say that homework is ethical, like at all, like the whole concept?
Ethical's a very
Yeah.
interesting thing because
Okay, maybe not. Okay, then maybe not.
I
ethical,
believe
but
it's
would you say-
ethical. It's just the part that I don't like is how homework is created like completely on accuracy. Like homework is just supposed to be there as like small practice just so you don't forget the topic.
Right.
Yeah.
Grading it like
Definitely.
completely based on like whether you do it perfectly or not is wrong. Because for you to do it perfectly, you gotta actually learn the topic, but that's what you're supposed to do in school, not at home.
I was with you for the first half of that. So for the first half of that, you were saying like, homework is there to review what you were taught. and then you should have accuracy, right? Like, because if you retained from what you did during the
I
day,
definitely
it should be like.
no. What I meant to say was like that shouldn't be the main focus of
Oh
it.
no, no.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
You know what we
'Cause-
need to, as students, we need to learn that even though it's like the obvious thing to say, classwork and homework are two different things. Once you make classwork homework, that's when you start gathering
Yeah, it's not
something.
fun.
The only way I would push back against that would be if I had allotted an X number of minutes for classwork for something that should reasonably have taken that
Like an
number
essay.
of minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the time. And let's just say you were having an off day and you didn't get it finished. Have it done for me by tomorrow so you're
Well,
caught up
that's
with everybody.
I honestly feel like that doesn't
That's
even count as
reasonable.
homework. That's just makeup work.
Well, but that's really the only kind of homework I end up assigning. Anything
Yeah, but
anything that isn't completed so that we can all move on together the next day.
Yeah, I'm mostly talking about like when homework gets assigned and it's completely based on accuracy, especially when it's a new topic or something. Like homework should just be there. Like you'll be able to reflect it like the next day. Like I feel like the perfect way to give homework is whether you did it or not. And then like on the next day, that's when you start like actually learning what you did wrong. Like if that makes sense. It just shouldn't be
Kinda like
completely
homework.
graded on accuracy.
I feel like that definitely depends on the class because that is 100% abusable. If homework was just graded on whether you did it or not, then
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
the same
you
thing
can-
as what I was talking
yeah,
about.
you can
with
just write
copying
whatever
it.
on the
Yeah.
paper and it's fine. I feel like it should be graded partly on accuracy, but
But
participation
then that would
should
take
count
time
more.
from the teacher. when they could-
And it's
that's
weird
not
though.
convenient.
It's a weird thing because when school is done right, it absolutely should prepare you for real life. Now, Gustavo, before we started rolling, you were talking about wanting to get into business and finance. If you wanted to go ahead and put an application together to start your small business, all of the research that you are doing to put that together to make that application, reasonable and acceptable, that counts as homework. You're doing that junk at home. Like you're taking time and setting your own pace. And I know you probably aren't specifically in a classroom at the time, but maybe you have a home office, or maybe you're at Starbucks, or whatever it is, or you're at the library, or whatever it is that you're working with. That's you prioritizing your own workload, doing as much or as little research as you think is appropriate. Like those time value decisions are all the skills that we should be teaching children when they are given homework so that they know how to manage their time when no one is breathing down their neck.
100%. I
Yeah.
believe specifically what you mentioned, the business and finance. I feel like more vocational skills should be taught in schools. 100%. I feel like management, business, like maybe anything else you could think of. Like students should be able to kind of tailor their schedule to what they need. Because I feel like I don't want to say it's necessarily filler, but I don't believe you need like 4 years of English or 4 years of math if you want to do something that doesn't really relate to those sectors of education.
I think you need 4 years. Personally, I think you need 4 years English and math at most. For making my schedule this year, I was very thoughtful on the APs specifically. I wasn't going to take an AP that I'm not going to, for example, AP Bio. I wasn't going to take it. I'm not considering majoring in science. I took the classes that I know will benefit me. I think that's also an issue we have. People tend to gather up so many APs, and then they end up not even.
Yeah, I feel like that's a better way to rephrase what I was saying. I feel like students should have classes that like tailor to what they want to go into. I feel like
Absolutely.
if we have more filler classes and electives, that's just kind of kind of fluff up their schedule. It's not really going to help. If we have classes that they're actually interested in and they're going to spend more investment into it. It's going to make more sense. They're going to learn a lot.
Oh, by far. I mean, I wasn't the greatest math student in high school, but I loved physics because physics was math with a purpose. It was math with a story attached to it. If I needed to throw a bowling ball 100 feet and I needed to figure the angle or the amount of force that was required, that's math that I was invested in doing because I wanted to launch that bugger as far as I possibly can with the right angle, with the right force to knock over whatever bowling pins or people who are standing there or whatever it is that I'm doing in this imaginary scenario. Math with a story would get me to do that. And as far as what you're talking about, like 3 years of English or 3 years or 4 years of math, remember what we're talking about here with business. If you're trying to, put a proposal together and you don't have the foundational math knowledge, or you don't have the foundational English knowledge in order to word something appropriately, or to like balance a sheet in order to be able to present it to somebody in order to get that bank loan approval, you're gonna hit a roadblock. And I'm not saying that it should be always, you know, the same prescriptive 4 years of English and math, but the kinds of skills that I'm gonna refer back to, the kinds of skills of time self-management, the skills of prioritizing your workload while you're at home without somebody breathing over your neck, that is all in the homework social skill set that we don't even touch at all. It's a throwaway time. We've devalued the intention and purpose of homework into like a check mark of whether you've done it or not, so that there is no time to put intention to the free time that you have. And you know what's going to happen if you put together a business plan without any sort of intention or any sort of real work behind it. It's going to get rejected. And a lot of our students are very well accustomed to putting minimal effort into anything that goes home, and then just sort of giving it to the teacher as far as like, well, I did a thing, and expecting that that's good enough, because that's how we've treated it. We've treated it as it's good enough for a check mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I fell into that habit a lot, especially homework. I feel like because of the pandemic, I like all the homework I've been doing. It's just like, okay, let me just write something and turn it in. Like, that's all I've been doing. I've never, well, sometimes I do, but most times I never like put an actual time into it. I just make sure that, oh, it's not good, it's something, I'll just turn it in.
Interesting. I wanted to actually ask a question because, Grace, you were mentioning that when you were making your schedule, you were looking more into the APs, right? So I actually want to ask a question to everyone. Do you think that students that focus on APs, like let's say someone picks out like 4, 5, 6 APs, the schedule is just a bunch of APs, do you think at that point they have a right to complain about the workload if they actively sought out those types of classes?
No, I feel like it's their responsibility. That, and I want to do 5 APs. Like, what are you expecting?
Yeah, what do you expect?
Yeah, like,
what are
are
you
you
doing?
expecting easy work? No, you set yourself
Like-
for that. Like,
Yeah, you're kind of just fluffing up your resume at that point, or your transcript.
Yeah, but are you? Because you can't really give. I don't know too many people who can give 100% in 5 different AP classes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they can't pass with A's. I'm saying they are incapable of giving their 100% into each of those AP classes. It's just, that energy is finite. You just don't have it.
no, yeah, 5 AP classes, and then let's say you want to do clubs on top of that.
That's not
Yeah.
And I can work on this from the adult angle too. I mean, there are a couple things that I turned down this year because, like I said, last year was a rough year, and I wanted to dedicate this year. In fact, my mantra from September was, I'm going to have fun or else. And so I cut back on a lot. I cut back on a lot of after-school stuff that I used to do. Like, I spent a lot of time coaching. I spent a lot of time with the athletics program before the plague. I did a lot of stuff after school. And I'm gonna slowly, maybe, start adding some of those as the workload becomes a little bit, more manageable, or I'm more familiar with the workload. But
Yeah, I think we tend to forget that we have the rights to say no to things.
oh, absolutely,
That's something
you
that I
absolutely
learned
do.
by the end of last year. Something I learned. I was like, I can say no to this. It's okay. You're not gonna It's okay. There's times where, for example, I do at most 15 clubs, and I take 3 APs. At most, I'll say that. And there's moments where I can't attend a meeting because I have a club, and then it goes up, and then it's just
All right, let's have
balance, finding balance.
15 is crazy.
I love
15 is a lot.
you learning how to say no is excellent. You know what I can't wait for? When you come to the realization that if somebody is disappointed in you, it's their problem.
Yeah.
When you internalize that, when someone's disappointed that you won't do the thing that they want you to do, and you're okay walking away with that without carrying any guilt, you are so powerful.
Oh, that's great.
Yes,
That shows that you have self-respect for yourself. That's perfect.
self-respect.
Yep.
Yep.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of kids, especially like sophomores and juniors, that like they want to do good in school. They say yes to every opportunity that comes across them. Like they take every club, every internship, and it just piles up, and they have 5 things at once. I was that kid. I did that last
Same.
year.
I'm
Yeah, exactly.
same.
It's not fun. You say yes to everything. Like you're in a million clubs. You're president. You don't even know what you're president of. It's just, it's not fun. And you just end up, you stay until midnight doing work, and you just, at that point, you're working a full-time job.
And then when your clubs overlap, and you have to be
Yes.
at the same, you have to be at 2 different locations at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh,
That ever
online
happen?
learning. Online learning. I had a tablet here, the computer here, going into 3 different meetings at once.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Like it sounds funny, but when you think about it, we did sign up for it. We did say yes. We were uninformed of what was going to happen, but we did sign up for it. So I feel like to that extent, we do have a right to complain because we were uninformed. It's technically our fault for not looking into it and thinking, hey, maybe I
But you're
shouldn't do
minors,
like
it's
5
not your
things.
fault.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the fault of people who put expectations on you when they know you are already preoccupied. It might be your fault that you don't mention. Like, hey, I want you to be involved in this club. Come on, let's go, kid. And you're not saying like, oh, but I'm also involved in X, Y, and Z club. If you just say, okay, then you kind of
Yeah.
walked in.
Yeah. Club fairs.
Because junior year, I was in a bunch of clubs. I just said yes to whatever because like, I'll be fine. And I was like almost trying to make up for lost time. And I also decided to do swimming. And I guess I forgot because over COVID I didn't swim. I forgot just how much commitment a sport is. Like even this year, I've been out sick for so long, but going to practice every single day, like the fact that I had so much practice for this and stuff like that, like keeping my time, I guess, managed is something I try to work on this year. You know, I said yes to all these clubs junior year, and maybe junior year was fine. But now this year, I look at all the clubs I'm still in, and I'm like, oh.
Yes. Yes.
You might want to take a moment and drop a few.
Yeah.
It's
I
also
mean,
like a mental health game too, because
Big time.
you're damaging yourself a bit because you're letting your thoughts battle within. Like, do I go in this?
Oh, definitely. It's insane.
So wait a minute. The topic overall is students being overburdened. How many of you have a part-time job after school in addition? Just the one. So you're in a sport. You're in 14,000 clubs. You're in a sport. You've been sick. And what job is it that you do after school?
Lifeguarding.
Lifeguarding. Okay. So at least it's in the swimming category. But in the winter?
Yeah. I work at the Y.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, cool. Must say it's really not going to be that busy right now. No, but so okay, you're swimming lifeguard at the Y. How much time does that leave you for sleep? I mean, no, I'm not. I know it's funny, but I guarantee that
No,
there's.
yeah.
It's just funny in the context. I've seen them up at like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Right.
Yo,
on
what happened
school
last
nights.
night? Yo, Joshua,
Yeah, what happened last night?
Grace talks about mental health. If you're not putting away 6+ hours a night, I'm not gonna say 8. I'm not gonna try to do the preaching on that. But if you're not putting away easily 6 hours a night, you're dragging, and everything suffers.
I noticed that because even for this podcast, I did not sleep very well. And I noticed that, like, it's just the small things, like maybe like I space out like that. or my
You just
tone
feel
will be a little
slower.
different. I just feel so slow. And
Yeah.
it's been like that for a while.
You get things wrong that you would never have gotten wrong
Oh my gosh.
if
yes.
you were rested.
Quite literally just feel slower in every
Speaking
single way.
English, I'm like,
Yeah, it doesn't come to you. It takes a few seconds. Yeah, I feel like last year, junior year, I don't remember a single day last year or a week where I slept for like more than 5 hours. Yeah, it was horrible. It really gets you because like someone talks to you and you just like stare at the floor. Like you don't know what's happening.
I'm gonna lie, the best sleep I had last year was when we were online.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally, yeah. Because you're waking up at like 8
So many
a.m.
kids
Oh,
missed
yeah.
their first
That was
class.
great.
It didn't matter. It was insane.
Oh no, I mean like I'm gonna be 100% with you. I wake up 7:30. I'm ready 8 o'clock for when homeroom hits online. The second 3 o'clock, whatever, that last class is done, I'm downstairs in the basement working out. I have a much better, like I live in Jersey City, so I have like a 40-minute commute here and back. I use that for whatever it is that I try to like, not have that time wasted. But it's very different than using that time for sleep in the morning or using that time for exercise in the afternoon. It makes a world of difference when you have that available to you. The work was soulless, but the actual time to improve on me was worthwhile.
Yeah, I noticed that too because I would be able to get out of school at like when we had the shortened schedule, I was able to go on walks with friends more. I was able to do stuff like that. Obviously, couldn't do a lot because of COVID, but that was my big thing, walking.
Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. That was like the one thing I really enjoyed about online school was that shortened schedule. No,
Oh.
the shortened schedule.
We didn't walk. I was a walker. Me and
You guys had a short
some of my
schedule.
friends.
Yeah, we had it short because.
Yeah, it wasn't for you charter kids. So it's-
Yeah.
You don't
know,
get that
we were
luxury.
left out.
Sorry.
No,
But I mean, yeah, I was really able to do something I wanted to do, was walk around, explore the town. Never was able to do that before. Always had so much stuff to do, but I noticed at the free time.
It's amazing what's in the town you grew up in. I mean, you guys y'all grew up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ish. It's amazing what's in the town you grew up in when you're allowed to exist in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I used to bash it a lot, but once quarantine hit or so, I did kind of the same thing in various occasions where I would just walk around and I was like, damn, like there's a lot more than I expected. I'm not saying we're perfect, obviously, but
Of course not.
No worries.
it's like,
There's some things to appreciate
I don't
that
know,
Purdue
yeah.
provides.
I think we veered a little off topic from homework.
Yes, we did.
It's
Yeah.
workload, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
so-
whatever.
I have a question since we're all seniors.
Ooh.
What are your thoughts on senioritis? So we're.
Oh boy.
It's completely real.
overworked and all
Well,
that
first,
stuff.
let's
Like, you
define
can-
it.
Yeah, can we define
Let's
it?
define
please?
Let's
senioritis.
define senioritis.
Because you could be compared to burnout, but is it burnout? I'm not.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we can set that boundary. Senioritis is comparable to burnout. So to what extent do you want to talk about?
I mean, my definition is quite literally just like once you reach to the point where it doesn't matter what you do, you're done. Like,
Yeah.
obviously that was an exaggeration, but like you can relax a lot more just because like the hard part is over. That's it. You did basically almost everything. So now you can start to like slow down right when you're about to reach the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, I do know that because I don't think it's hit. I don't know if it's hit us yet because,
Yeah,
not all the
I don't think
acceptances of,
it-
not all the
Oh, definitely not.
acceptances
I
have
imagine
been-
it's gonna hit like around when spring break is starting to
Yeah,
hit.
like when you realize, oh, this is the college I'm gonna go to, I'm set for everything.
Unless for the people who have early decision,
Yeah, then they got
they have early-itis.
Early-itis.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you eventually reach that point, it just,
You
what's
just
the
give
point?
up.
What's the point?
I feel like right now we're slowing down. I've definitely seen
Yeah.
it myself. Like I'm taking a lot more time doing assignments. Like I'm procrastinating a lot. But I feel like once I get into the school I want, I'm scared I'm just gonna not go to school, just give up.
That happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It
It's
happens
a
to a
scary
lot.
feeling.
Weren't you absent like twice and you got a letter home?
But as a teacher, do you see it?
Me, of course. I mean, I've seen versions of senioritis from back in shell school.
Oh.
You know, like that senioritis is something that's pervasive among the grades. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
7th graders, 8th graders, 6th graders. Like there's definitely the point in which you're done and you don't have to do something. That is when those behaviors start. All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially if the work you are accustomed to getting is busy work, or especially if the work you're accustomed to getting is just getting a check mark that it is done, as opposed to being convinced that the work that you have has some sort of intrinsic self-improvement value. Like I still plan on doing a lot of self-reflective work for my AP kids, like for a while, but the reality is that anything that I assign them, it's not for me. Like it's not for me, it's for them. Like I've already graduated, I've already done all this, I already have all my degrees, I don't need to worry about anything else. This is not for my benefit, it is for your benefit. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. You're practically an adult, you can handle it. But one of the biggest problems you mentioned before about going to college and having a hard time going to class, That usually happens for the young men and women who never had the opportunity to be self-reliant. And they get that first chance at being self-reliant when they are surrounded by people who are also 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, who are there for as much of a good time as they are for a degree, probably more so. And it's infectious and it is dangerous to your success, but the best advice I can offer for that is prioritize you and prioritize yourself for long term. Enjoy yourself. I'm not saying stay in, by far. I'm not saying that. Go out, go party, go meet new people, go do every stupid legal thing you can do that involves consent. Do all that, but make sure that you're prioritizing, your class time and making sure that that homework piece, because those college classes are going to be all homework. In fact,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to get to. That's what reminded me. And Gustavo, I want to thank you for putting me back on your track here. Francis, you were talking about homework. In college, absolutely every assignment except for the exams are homework. Every single one. You will have a 90-minute lecture in which you need to pay attention to some person talking on a topic. You're not doing work in class. It's not collaborative. Usually, there are no cereal box projects. There are no posters. None of that garbage. Whatever the assignments on the syllabus are, you could probably even skip most classes. Most of your colleges, they don't do attendance, especially for the big schools. The big schools with like the 400-person seating, they don't do attendance usually. Smaller classes with like 25, whatever, yeah, they probably do, and they want to make sure you're showing up because they have a monetary investment in you physically being there. It's a business. Don't get it twisted. College is a business. They want to make sure that you keep showing up and keep paying your tuition. But for the classes that don't take attendance, as long as you can handle the material and do your own research and turn in the assignments, you probably would be fine. But make no mistake, every single college assignment is homework. You're taking it home and prioritizing your time and your effort and balancing that against the homework given to you from everything else. They might call it a term paper, they might call it some kind of project, whatever. It's all homework. It's all you taking it home. You have to get used to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely more difficult in college because I think it depends on the infrastructure system they use, especially Canvas. Like if you try turning in an assignment after the deadline, you don't have the option. You
Right.
just miss out on a grade.
That's the second thing people have a hard time getting used to. Like, it's hard because, for someone who's been in the middle school and the high school, I can tell you that a majority of the anxiety that comes along with teaching is being legally responsible for your physical and socio-emotional well-being during the time that you are under our care. And I don't care if you're your 18 or 19-year-old senior, legally, we're still in loco parentis. That's Latin for the, in place of the parent. That is actually like the term that they teach us. You slip and fall doing something stupid in my room, that's my fault. Like, I don't care if you're 18 years old. Francis, you want to jump on the desk and you slip and fall and you crack your arm, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble for some stupid junk that you did. And that's the most extreme version of it, but anytime a fight breaks out in a classroom, it's hours of conversation. Hours of conversation. What did you do wrong? Juan, Mr. Juan, what did you do wrong in the class? Why were they not engaged? The children wouldn't be fighting if they were engaged in the class the whole time. Let me see your lesson plans. Let's go ahead and create an action plan for you to make sure that doesn't happen again. That kind of thing is there constantly. All right. At college, you're not going to have that. Your professors have the lecture time. They have their office hours. You're a whole adult. If you jump up on the table during a lecture hall and you slip and you fall, the professor's probably not, well, it depends on the type of class and depends on the professor. but they might wait until you get up or get carted out of the room before they just continue going on. Like, they're not
Yeah, they're not there for you.
They're not there for
Nervous
you.
mind.
They're there to teach the content and expect that you are paying attention to it enough that you can synthesize it for whatever assignment it is or the exam. And that's it. That's it on them. And they have maybe 2 hours or 3 hours a week in their office for you to come to physically see them if you have a problem. So you have to take initiative on that too. And that's another thing that a lot of high school students struggle with. They suffer because they're not used to taking that kind of initiative to approach somebody when they have the problem. They expect, just like in high school, you know, Joshua, I noticed you've had like poor test scores the last 3 times around. Is everything okay? Like, hey, how many times have you had that conversation in the last like 12 years? Like, whatever it is, like you may not personally have because you're a bright dude, but like you pull any 5 kids in the cafeteria. How many times have you been approached about bad grades? And they could probably list good 6, 7 teachers over the course of their lives from kindergarten on who has mentioned at least one time and followed up with them. That junk does not happen. It does not happen in the community college. It doesn't happen in the 4 years. It doesn't happen in the Ivy Leagues. It's all on you.
Oh.
Damn.
I need a breather.
Yeah, I'd be forgetting we're graduating in like how long now?
And I wish they tell us this. I wish they tell us this because it's like, I'm a first generation. I'm clueless. I'm just hearing this. I'm more informed than I've ever been. So it's just.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Point of the podcast.
That's the whole point.
Like, it's overwhelming enough that you have to go through the process alone, but the fact that like you really have to gain these traits as someone that's in their late
Yes.
20s
Oh, yeah.
as a teenager,
Oh yeah.
it's insane. It really is.
And no one's going to do it for you. And you're going to have a guidance counselor. But again, okay, you're going to see the words guidance counselor. And you're going to imagine the type of people who are downstairs building your schedule, contacting authorities if there's a problem at home, organizing more socio-emotional stuff if you go ahead and need other interventions. The guidance counselors in college, you tell them what classes you want at what times, and they will let you know whether it's available, and you need to get a hold of them first before other people take those time slots. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself with a 7 p.m. class on a Friday, and you're not going to want that junk. You're not going to want that. They're not, the job descriptions for people who have the same titles are not the same at all. And the difference is, for the 5 of you, you're going to be in better position because, like I said, you're here after school doing an activity that requires a lot of extra work, requires a lot of extra time and a lot of extra investment. You're used to putting in that kind of effort for yourself. Not everybody who you pass in the hallway is ready to do that. In fact, I'm going to ask you, and next time you're in the cafeteria tomorrow, I don't care what building it is, in the cafeteria, look at all of the faces around you and ask yourself, who is ready to get up with an alarm on their own time, make it somewhere on time every day. Make sure that they are going to finish the assignments that are due for that class at that time. I'll tell you the most embarrassing moment of my time in college. I'm gonna tell you the most embarrassing moment of my time in college. Okay, ready?
All right.
There was a set reading that we were all supposed to do. It was like 20 pages, whatever. Yeah, people read through it, whatever. And it was one of my English classes. All right, so it was some short story, probably something from William Carlos Williams or whatever nonsense it was. And we was a 20-person class, and nobody had a clue about what that story or whatever it was about. I forget the topic, but nobody had any clue. And the professor made this very clear. He said, okay, how many of you did the reading? Most of the hands went up. Okay, cool. How many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you only keep your hands up if you struggled to understand the reading? Everybody's hands kept up. Okay. Okay. How many of you did any one of these things. Went to the school library to research commentary that other people have made about that piece of reading so you can have a better understanding of it. So you come to class prepared. How many of you came to my office hours since last week to ask me to help better guide you through this? How many of you, and it was 2002, internet was okay. How many of you went to EBSCOhost or like whatever it is to go ahead and like look up other things on, even just a Google search? How many of you even did that? Everybody's hand. You start seeing hands start slowly dropping. He said, I'll see you next week after you've tried any of that. Class was over in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't blame him because that was an epic amount of self-respect where you're sitting there with a whole bunch of adults. I mean, yeah, he probably should, like, if it was, as a high school teacher, I can't do that, obviously. And I have to just sort of suck it up and deal with it. And push forward with nobody knowing what the hell we're talking about. But 8 months from now, that's gonna be all of you who need to, well, really, 8 months from now, that's gonna be all of you who need to do what is needed to be done so that you are prepared for the time in which you are sitting down with the professor who is the expert in that field.
Yep.
Ready for the conversation. And I'm sure, even among the 5 of you who are accomplished, I'm sure among the 5 of you, you have gone to a class without having done the reading first. I'm sure among the 5 of you, you have done that already. I have done that too. It's normal. It's normal. But not after that moment. I didn't do it after that. I made sure to know what I was talking about when I got there, except for today's podcast. But, like,
So give you some valuable insight, though. I appreciate it.
no
No,
problem.
yeah, very much appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's just about all the time we have left.
Right
It's
on.
just about 5, so I think that would be a good time to just wrap it up. And thank you, Mr. Kleckner, for
That little lesson at the end to wrap it up.
Yeah.
thank you, Grace, for your insight. And
Oh, we got Kevin the cameraman.
yeah,
Cameraman Kevin.
I mean,
Got a good catch.
That's about it.
mhm.
Great talk, guys.
Until
You
the
never
next
know how to
So
episode.
outro
much
these.
for being invited. I'm happy to
Yeah.
come back anytime. Great.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, and thank you guys for watching this video. And
Did I hear a rumor that there's merch?
I mean,
Merch link.
it's merch
It's sneak
for
peek.
me.
Are you gonna show it?
Education
Merch?
Contemplation.
Education Contemplation.
It's not.
This
It's not
podcast
official
tonight,
yet.
You gotta
It's
turn-
Likes, we'll release this merch for the public to buy.
It's
Yo,
not
no,
a.
you gotta turn around, bro. Show the back.
Has a YouTube on
I haven't
the
even
back.
seen the back.
Yeah, there's a
I
YouTube
haven't even
channel on
seen
the
the back.
back.
I typically don't. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
At least 30
Merch
likes
link in
on
bio.
this
Yeah.
30
podcast.
likes.
We'll release
Yeah.
the merch.
30.
Yeah, it's not.
30 whole likes.
30 likes.
30
30
likes.
likes.
All we
Yeah.
need is 30.
Yeah,
Just
so
a just a
All we need
prototype.
is 30 likes.
30.
30 likes.
Listen,
thank you for watching this.
It's 29 likes. Come on, guys.
Have a good day.
All right.
Bye. Bye.